I would take it to cram for my exam the night before.
I would take it to go out to clubs.
I would take it to lose weight.
I would take it to focus more.
I would take it to have more energy.
It's been called brain candy, brain steroids, library skittles, and students can't seem to get enough. The magic pill that endures sleepless nights, writes term papers, conquers exams, and makes mom and dad proud.
Adderall is a prescription medication that contains a combination of two powerful stimulant drugs, dextroamphetamine and amphetamines.
And it acts in the brain to increase dopamine. That's the main action, which is kind of a neurotransmitter in the brain that we use for alertness.
During the span of a semester, we interviewed several students, doctors, and professors to investigate the ever-increasing presence of Adderall across campuses.
I've noticed that I do need it when I'm not on it. I'm not able to focus as well. I don't retain as much information. And then when I am on it, it's literally, I'm like a totally different person when it comes to retaining information.
Typical day with Adderall, I actually do get all of my work done. I know that it's having some effect on my heart rate and stuff. So I'm like, you're gonna do this to your body, you might as well study. So that's what forces me to study.
Adderall is a medication that should be given to individuals who have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist that they suffer from a disorder known as attention deficit disorder.
In children, it's usually very obvious because there's usually a hyperactivity component to it. Whereas in adulthood, you usually just have the attention problems, the distractibility problems, and what we call executive functioning problems. So not being able to plan ahead for things, not being able to organize things, break large projects down into smaller things, use your time wisely, and to obviously the focus and the attention is still a problem.
According to a recent Harvard study, less than 5% of adults in the United States experience symptoms of ADD. But what does it take to be properly diagnosed?
The diagnosis of ADHD, it's a very complex process and actually requires a full battery of assessments that can take up to 5-6 hours for us to be able to accurately diagnose attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
The age range that stimulants are usually prescribed for depends on when ADHD is diagnosed.
Typically, we want to encourage students to make sure that they seek a medical or psychological evaluation to see if there is indeed a genuine mental health concern.
Before the prescription is written, a comprehensive analysis should be held. During this evaluation, a clinical professional asks questions about the individual's habits and lifestyles.
So we would ask questions like, is it difficult for you to pay attention in class? Do you feel like you're daydreaming, or the whole class could go by and you remember very little of what was said? So that's sort of the attention problems, or the hyperactivity where you find it difficult to sit in your chair, you want to blurt out answers without being called on, and sort of impulsive types of behavior.
Natalie Scott and William Reed are both college students who have been diagnosed with ADD. William was originally prescribed Concerta, a less potent alternative to Adderall.
I told the psychiatrist my history with the Concerta, and I told her how it made me feel. She recommended Adderall. Adderall would make me feel more alert and more aware of what's going on, and I'd be able to retain more information by actively working towards trying to retain information as opposed to letting the drug do the work for me.
I didn't go to the psychiatrist for Adderall. I went to the psychiatrist for extended time because I never, ever finished tests on time. The conclusion they arrived at is that the reason I take so long is because of ADD. So they gave me the extended time, but for homework, I guess the Adderall was the solution.
I take it at 8 o'clock in the morning with my coffee, and then I'm just literally very goal-oriented that entire day. As opposed to when I don't have it, I forget things, I'm just totally everywhere.
I don't really think that my ADD shows socially, if I even actually have ADD, except I forget everything. For example, is like always locking my car with the keys inside. I used to do it like monthly. I think this is the first time in my life that I've been organized ever since I got my iPhone because I literally write everything down. Like before you lock your car, make sure your keys are in your hand. Like I write stuff like that, like everything.
While Natalie and William have both suffered from ADD symptoms for years, faking the symptoms seem to be a growing trend as students attempt to gain access to the medication.
There's definitely, it's been on the news more increasingly. There's more of awareness of ADHD and also of abuse of things like Adderall and Ritalin. So people hear about it, they're like, oh, there's medications that can help me study. So people very frequently have come in and kind of memorized the symptoms of ADHD. And so if you ask them, and across the board, it's yes, 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 I can't sit still, yes, I daydream in class, yes, I can't focus on tests, that becomes a little suspicious.
With students faking the symptoms of a serious disorder, one must ask, what do they have to gain? And is it really effective?
People with normal functioning brains might use this to help them as a study aid because it increases their focus, their attention. They can sit down for an extended period of time and study.
But brain chemistry is known to be unique to every individual, and so boosting dopamine in the brain can cause inconsistent results and reactions.
I'll be like, oh, here we go. Day starting, heart's racing, gotta get out of bed. I kind of, expected a lot out of it. Like, if I'm doing this, I'm immediately gonna have an A in my class, which obviously isn't true. You still have to do the work and stuff. And a lot of the times, I would neglect my work and obsessively clean my apartment or decide to do all my laundry or update my Twitter incessantly instead of doing the work.
I guess if you don't have a purpose when you do take Adderall, such as studying, you just wander off and just focus on something else for hours.
Anybody ever talks about and how nobody can function without it, how it's so much easier to do homework with it.
First time I took it, very worried. Like I said, I actually felt horrible. I was like, I never want to take this again. It was just stress and paranoia making me feel very anxious.
I took it that one time because I was desperate and my friends told me that it would really help me. It was really good and I was also a little bit curious. And I remember that I didn't eat, I didn't do anything, I just sat straight and studied for 12 hours straight.
I have trouble sleeping the first few nights because my body had to get used to it.
My friend, when he was on Adderall, his pupils were dilated and he was very focused and wide awake. He would continue on a conversation that really meant nothing, but he'd want to talk about it for about 25, 30 minutes when it's usually only a 5-minute conversation.
One of the most common side effects of Adderall is suppressed appetite, a factor that troubles many, but it can also encourage those seeking ways to lose weight.
When I take it, I do lose my appetite and it's worrisome.
Stimulants were developed was to help people lose weight. They are effective as short-term appetite suppressants, and by short-term I mean less than 10 days. They're effective for about a week to 2 weeks to help you keep weight off.
I can eat with it, but I have to kind of force myself to eat.
If anybody makes use of a particular medication for things like losing weight, my concern will be that that's probably a symptom, that's the reflection of a larger problem that individual may be dealing with and trying to cope with. It may be an issue of self-image, maybe not having a positive self-image, and so weight, body image becomes a greater concern for that individual.
It's similar to using cocaine to suppress your appetite. It's setting you up for a long-term addiction.
I won't eat all day, which is what I used to do at the beginning with it. But then I've learned, taking nutrition classes and things like that, I'll force myself to eat something.
With Adderall, I can feel myself getting hungry, but I have no desire to eat, so I'll usually eat fruit or something really small, like a piece of bread maybe, and I'll always have coffee. It's so hard to eat on Adderall.
Though coffee alone is readily consumed by Americans to obtain many of the same effects as Adderall, doctors warn that combining the two stimulants is risky business.
Take two stimulants together, you're going to exacerbate the effect. So even drinking a lot of coffee or having espresso at the same time as taking this will cause more cardiovascular symptoms. It will drive their blood pressure up. It will drive their heart rate up.
They are both stimulants, which means that they both cause increased level of wakefulness and alertness, Coffee, of course, is not regulated.
So my hands were shaking, I felt really nauseous, I was sweating really, really, really hard, and I almost couldn't focus because I was so jittery.
They will start feeling some somatic symptoms. They may get nauseous in their stomach. They may start sweating a lot from overstimulation. So they'll become jittery, their blood pressure will go up, their heart rate will go up, they'll be sweating.
I've seen several stimulant-induced mood disorders and even psychotic disorders.
My heart rate is just too out of control. I wouldn't take it every day, no.
But a lot of these effects are experienced solely with Adderall and can present serious health dangers and risk of dependency.
There have been well-documented cases of sudden cardiac death, meaning even without any predisposing known cardiac condition can cause someone to die suddenly of a sudden cardiac death.
If perhaps it's a young person that already has early symptoms of heart disease, may have high blood pressure, they are much more susceptible to have a stroke if taking this medication on a regular basis.
Still young, obviously I don't see any negative effect. I see that the days I don't take Adderall, I'm a lot more likely to lay in my bed and watch TV.
So as an adolescent, you're developing your brain and your body, and you're taking these pills that are integrating into your brain. So you really don't know the long-term effects in 10 years.
When our generation decides the power of their own minds just isn't enough, we must ask, what are the driving factors leading American students to take these seemingly extreme measures?
My mom is the person that most thinks I have ADD. She's the one that pushed me to get the Adderall. She doesn't know. I tell her how it makes me feel, but she doesn't really get it. She thinks that I don't want to take it out of laziness.
These are very real circumstances. The amounts of pressure and challenges that our students, are facing today are enormous.
I want to go into the health field, so I need that extra boost. And you have people from all over the world trying to get the same position as you.
And William is not alone. Many students feel that they must distinguish themselves from the rest to attain a competitive edge going into the workforce.
You need to study a lot and have a lot of pressure, especially when you graduate, because you need to get a job. And right now it's not easy.
And by taking Adderall, I get an A. I'd rather do that than don't do it and fall asleep and risk getting a worse grade.
We certainly are in one of the top 50 universities in the country, and so it can be hyper competitive, at times. We know that some of these, behaviors actually start in middle school, maybe even high school, where students begin to experience, the pressure of performing academically at a very high level in order to get into schools such as, UM.
It seems to me that with each generation we face more and more competition. We're no longer guaranteed just to go to college and have a good job when we're done.
Many consider the drug an easy way out. Is Adderall really just a tool used to procrastinate?
In this country, we have an attitude of, oh, there's a pill I can take for that. And Adderall is that pill that's the pill of the moment, where people think, I don't have to work real hard, I can just take a pill and that'll help me study and get good grades.
They were procrastinate, and in the end, the night before, they realize they have a huge exam and they need to study and they don't know anything.
I just felt like I could do everything and anything at the same time. I wanted to go to the library, I'd go. I wanted to go somewhere else, I'd go. If I wanted to go work out, I could do it all in one day instead of just being lazy and not doing it.
Could it really be helping students who desire success and need an extra push when times get rough?
So for me, it's basically a helper to ensure that I will do the best that I can to get into dental school.
If I'm working hard enough in the class, Adderall has definitely helped me improve my grades.
When people in the library falling asleep, they ask people, do you have Adderall? As it's like a kickstand to help them.
Hey, can I buy a pill from you? Hey, can I buy a pill from you? Hey, let me get some for finals.
We're looking for a shortcut.
According to a survey we conducted among students in the Miami area, almost half of respondents admitted to currently taking Adderall, 73% of them without a prescription. With this growing demand for Adderall, a supply must exist to match. But where does it all come from?
I have a family member who's a doctor, so he can just prescribe it to me. You can only get Adderall every so often, and when you're regularly prescribed it, you have to go yourself to refill it every month. But my family member can just write me the script and give me 2 or 3 months worth and then I'll hold on to that, and then when it's done at the end of those 2 or 3 months, then I can go back and get a refill.
It's harder to come by with Adderall. Adderall is, it's harder to get somebody to give their prescribed pills because they personally need it. So maybe it's harder, it's a less street drug. It's probably found more on campus than on any corner.
People that get prescribed already, they just resell it.
And it's really easy to make money off of them. People buy them for $5 a pill, and I get them for free.
From my clinical experience that I see a number of college students that come here for numerous anxiety, depression, all kinds of things that kind of mention, oh yeah, I'm also taking Adderall, whether it's prescribed from their primary care doctor or they obtain it from their roommate or somebody else. It seems to me that it's quite high.
Though the sale and exchange of Adderall seems to be widespread and socially accepted across campuses, many users are not aware that the drug is classified as a Schedule II controlled substance, along with opium, morphine, and cocaine.
Adderall definitely could be a gateway drug in that as a young person you learn, if I have a problem I can take a drug and a drug will solve my problem. So later in life, if you have another problem, take a drug, it'll solve your problem.
So they think, oh, I can just take it to stay up, or I can take it to suppress my appetite, or both, or to study. And so I think it's equally as dangerous as the street drugs.
When investigating this classification, we found that both Adderall and cocaine are listed as having a high potential for abuse and produce many of the same effects. Some of these include increased energy and focus, dramatic changes in mood, increased heart rate, and the risk of heart attack and stroke.
Where they are increasingly asking for higher and higher doses, or I lost my prescription, or someone stole my medications, which all of this could be true, but we take it into a clinical picture. If it's repeated behavior, then we start to get suspicious.
So we asked our doctors what healthy alternatives they would suggest for students who may be resorting to these drugs.
People kind of underestimate sleep, and sleep is where all of your memory and your learning is consolidated. So if you're not getting good sleep, it doesn't matter how much you study. In the long term, you're not actually going to remember what you study.
Everything from physical activity, exercise, getting adequate sleep, a good diet.
Clearly, exercise has a large component of it can kind of clear your brain, help you with concentration. It's a natural and anxiolytic and antidepressant.
Maybe seeking family support, even a spiritual support through a synagogue or church.
Eating healthy, you cannot just eat plain sugar or plain carbs during times that you're supposed to be studying.
Sometimes even counseling, talking to a counselor, getting some coaching on performance enhancement skills that could improve academic performance.
Right, I think it's all about a well-rounded lifestyle.
Students find themselves, under a lot of pressure to succeed and to perform academically, actually to exceed in their performance.
I definitely think there's a stigma attached to it, and I think that there's a lot of people who just assume it's going to help them, but who don't really take it seriously. They're kind of just like, oh, if I take this Adderall, everything will come easily to me. There is still work you have to do.
When you take Adderall, you just memorize everything. You might learn, but you're not learning to actually learn and intake the knowledge. You're learning just to get a good grade on the exam.
If you have that much necessity to study, you're going to study anyway without the Adderall.
Statistics indicate that roughly between 7 to 25% of college students indicate having to resort to the use of pharmaceutical stimulants without a medical or psychological evaluation and without a prescription.
I don't think that Adderall actually cures anything. I think it's purely a placebo effect.
You're trying to find the easy way out, and you're looking for a fast solution for a long-term problem.
I think it's cheating.
That's why I don't take it. I don't trust pills.
It defeats the purpose of college. It defeats the purpose of paying a really high tuition to get a good education and actually growing yourself as a person.
So is Adderall a college student's best friend or worst enemy? Does it minimize distractions or create them? And most importantly, when your health and morality are at stake, is it all worth it?
I've noticed that I do need it when I'm not on it. I'm not able to focus as well. I don't retain as much information. And then when I am on it, it's literally, I'm like a totally different person when it comes to retaining information.
Typical day with Adderall, I actually do get all of my work done. I know that it's having some effect on my heart rate and stuff. So I'm like, you're gonna do this to your body, you might as well study. So it forces me, that's what forces me to study.
Adderall is a medication that should be given to individuals.
Makes mom and dad proud.
Adderall is a prescription medication that contains a combination of two powerful stimulant drugs, dextroamphetamine and amphetamines.
And it acts in the brain to increase dopamine. That's the main action, which is kind of a neurotransmitter in the brain that we use for alertness.
During the span of a semester, we interviewed several students, doctors, and professors to investigate the ever-increasing presence of Adderall across campuses.
Individuals who have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist that they suffer from a disorder known as attention deficit disorder.
In children, it's usually very obvious because there's usually a hyperactivity component to it. Whereas in adulthood, you usually just have the attention problems, the distractibility problems, and what we call executive functioning problems. So not being able to plan ahead for things, not being able to organize things, break large projects down into smaller things, use your time wisely, and to obviously the focus and the attention.
I would take it to cram for my exam the night before.
I would take it to go out to clubs.
I would take it to lose weight.
I would take it to focus more.
I would take it to have more energy.
It's been called brain candy, brain steroids, library skittles, and students can't seem to get enough. The magic pill that endures sleepless nights, writes term papers, conquers exams, and makes
is still a problem.
According to a recent Harvard study, less than 5% of adults in the United States experience symptoms of ADD. But what does it take to be properly diagnosed?
The diagnosis of ADHD, it's a very complex process and actually requires a full battery of assessments that can take up to 5-6 hours for us to be able to accurately diagnose attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
The age range that